representation be of a person who's on the middle way, and how would his extreme counterpart look like?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. It's dangerous to sort of that. There's no averages in human beings, like the average radical middle way person. But what we have in mind, the ideal person who we are engaging with, or hope to engage with, or who we hope to develop, would be somebody who is one dynamic, for whom Islam is a source of inspiration and joy. Something which he uses to enhance both the quality and the quantity of his life. So for him, he does things in a measured way. When people talk about extremism, people then limit even the understanding of extremism. Extremism is, for instance, losing a sense of balance. For instance, somebody will say, let's hurry up on the prayers, which even the best of Fard Salah would take about not more than 5 minutes. Yet they say, it takes ages to pray. And then they can sit down and watch football for 2 hours and not have the quantifiable name, you see. So it's somebody who will watch football, but he will also do dhikr, but he'll put a balance in between. He's somebody who will be angered by what is going on wrong, but also have husna dhanna of believing that people can do better if they're given the right chances and the right opportunities. So it's what you might call the yin and yang, the good and the bad, trying to balance out. And that is in all aspects of life. What he eats, how he talks, how he relates to people, and how his muamalat, how his actions are. You can't be extreme. Extreme like if you love your wife, you only send flowers on Valentine's Day, your anniversary, or on Eid Day, A radical middle way person will be somebody who remembers the wife frequently, plus the other occasions. But perhaps not with chocolates, because that will cause weight problems for the wife, but other ways of doing things,
Okay, thank you. So can the model of radical middle way be replicated elsewhere, and should it?
Well, the radical middle way is, broadly speaking, a movement. It's a movement about changing mindsets. It's not that it can be replicated somewhere. I think there is a necessity in the modern world to have it in one form or another in different parts of the world. Why? Because it talks about change, about creating agents of change. It talks about setting the agenda for change, and also talking about how to facilitate change. And this change is the most important change of all. It's in the change in attitude, in the change of mindset. It's about redefining certain values and rediscovering old ones and making them relevant and pertinent to the issues and the struggles and the challenges of our time. Because human being, the quality he's got is always a learning animal. So you provide that experience, which is worth textbook experience, but also experiential, where he can actually experience that thing. Also, radical middle is about broadening the so-called Muslim agenda, not to restrain it. So it could be anything. It's not only about talks about Islamic politics or Islam, but spirituality, but also Islamic recreation, sitting down and jamming, singing songs together, reciting poetry, watching film, reading books. It's enormous.
That would be connected to my next question. In some circles, there seems to be the mindset that if Muslims are truly akhirah oriented, then they shouldn't get involved in politics. So what do you have to say about this, especially in terms of civic activism and participation?
That's a very pertinent question. It comes all the time about it. But you know what? We are responsible for both our paradises on earth and on the paradises on Jannah. The ones in Jannah, Allah will give you because of His rahmah. The ones on this earth, we've got to make it ourselves. The whole idea about civic engagement is because Islam is such a beautiful faith. One of the strangeness about Islam that It cannot be practiced on a deserted island. To implement the 5 pillars of the deen, you have to do, there's the Shahada, there's the Prophet ﷺ, but you have to do Hajj. You cannot do Hajj except with other people. You perform prayers with other people, the Jama'ah. You do Jum'ah with other people. So it's a collective religion. It's an Abud faith. So that is very important for Muslims to understand, that they need to engage in civic society, because that's where the judgment of the mu'amalat is there. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, even picking up objects in the street is, that's part of civil service. Being good to your neighbors, that's civic society. Getting engaged in the political process is enjoining good and forbidding evil. There are some scholars now who really actually believe that participation is almost fard, because if you don't vote and then somebody comes in who's a danger to Islam, then you will be partly responsible for that. So Muslims have never been historically afraid of engagement, but not partial engagement, total engagement, where they get engaged in all kinds of things. It's not that some things they want to engage, some things they want to be segregated. That's not how our legacy is.
So how has social media affected Muslim life in their spirituality, in acquiring of knowledge and adab, etc.?
The whole way in which information or knowledge is transferred in the world today has affected everybody, in particular people of faith. The Muslims are equally affected because of the power of the medium in terms of its outreach. One of the reasons is things like Facebook, like tweets, they are of bare minimum. They can't just give a big talk on them. So you need 2-3 lines to articulate what is going. It's like actually postmodern poetry. Because poetry, the power of poetry was you could say so much with 1 line or 2 lines and provoke so many imagination and stuff. We're still far away from that with the social media, with Facebook and Twitter. But I think in a way we're heading there. Even the way they write long words, they write TLC, TK, that's the initials, and after some time you read it actually. You didn't need all those letters in a thing. The negative part about the social media is that you never get chance to have in-depth understanding or knowledge about the issue or the topic, because there's always this insane rush to finish and move to the next stage. You don't describe, you don't explain, you assume others know. So I think that's a thing. But the other thing is also the speed of how people fast. For political purposes in Islam, it's been a very good way of informing people, mobilizing people, and organizing people. I don't know about what's going to happen in the future, but already in some places like a mosque will send out, it takes prayers in 10 minutes around the area, so people will know and they will go. It's also for proving affirmative. When somebody sees something, they want to affirm that this what is happening is what I felt. So textbook or social media is very good, because it said, did you see this? That was right on. I like. Like is a very important thing on Facebook, because it makes you part of a community of people who like. It doesn't say what you like. It could be all of you putting tick on like, but don't know what you like.
You're also known as the man responsible for bringing traditional scholars to the West. From what you've seen, what are the impacts or effects of having such men of God in the West specifically?
It's a big blessing to have people of great learning and knowledge from the Muslim world coming and visiting us in the West for several reasons. One of them is they bring this authenticity and leadership which we need. Second, they clarify some of the very critical issues which our young people need to. But third, I think more important, they also bring the barakah, the blessing of people of God who come. And it's very important in this world that young people come across, at least even once in their life, people of God who, when they look at them, reminds them of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahabas and something like that. So it's been a blessing to bring these people, because it does all this. The trick here is when these people come, you give them maximum exposure to all kinds of people. So there's a truly engagement, there's a true kind of outreach work done. The challenge has been scholars come for 1 week or 2 weeks, they do programs, they go away, till 6 months or 1 year later they come back again. But what do you do between now and 6 months and stuff? This people like myself, like Simple Islam, you have this problem. We have to make sure that every time a scholar comes, it's a peak, and that from that peak you go to another peak. But you need to create the steps that you take you there. And also people get inspired. They'll come here for a talk or something. They get very inspired by one particular teacher. But when that finishes, they're driving back home. Then they went to the light, and now they're coming back to darkness. So these are real issues people ask, and these are issues that we need to answer.
In your many years as a journalist, what were some of your favorite stories or highlights that you've covered, or highlights in your journalistic career?
There are many, and they're very fond, and alhamdulillah, I've had I think there are stories that can be categorized in many ways. I remember visiting a house in Britain where I had a tomato which had written Allah on it, you see, and going and looking at it, and then seeing the looks on the neighbors and the proud, family which owned the tomatoes, I think it's a good story. Others have been, political extreme. One of the memories I cherish most was in the late 80s. I visited as a correspondent refugee camps in Mozambique, which is border with South Africa. And at the time I had an allowance, per diem allowance to spend, So when I went to this refugee camps, I found that the allowance I had per day for myself was enough to kill a goat and eat it with another 30 people or something like that. So I did that for as long as I was there, and I'm quite proud about that. And I can still remember the faces and the people, how much relief and happiness I brought, not about sharing the meat only, but having somebody, stranger, coming and sitting with them and sharing a meal and listening to them. I think one of the greatest things about journalism as a profession is not about reporting people, but to go actually and listen to people's stories. And I think this is where the great thing is about is everywhere you go, all kind of human beings, Muslims, they've got a story to tell. They want to share it. This is why the telecommunication industry is such a multi-billion-dollar industry. Everybody wants to tell a story. You want to talk to somebody. It's an irrepressible sort of urge. And so going around, sitting down with, from Afghani mujahids to African farmers to Bosnian sportsmen to all kinds of people, and listening to the story, and then you getting an opportunity when it comes to retell that story to a wider audience and pegging it to such a way that it moves other people to all not only understand, but for them to do something about that story. I think that's been my experience.
For a long time, Q News was the only credible, reliable, and respected Muslim magazine in the English-speaking world. So did you achieve what you set out to do, and what actually happened to Q News?
You know what? It's always clever to look back and say something about. But to be honest, Q News was born out of one just simple desire. It was in the post-Rushdie affair, and the idea was, I was one of those few people who thought the idea of banning a book was not the best way of dealing with a bad book. I thought the best way was to write a good book. But when you looked around, you saw that there was a flaw. We were not a community that was going to write books. So Radical Middle, the Q News was set up essentially to bring together young, talented people so that they can have facilitate or be trained or have the opportunity to gain skills on how to handle ideas so that they can especially write books, write stories in a magazine and stuff. So in that way, that was one of them. The other second aim, which I always look, is we wanted to set up a community publication, because one of the best ways of defining a community is through a media network. But then can you imagine when we started Q News, we did not have contacts with the rest of the British communities. So most of the time we ended up with a big white screen, ringing people up. Have you got news? I don't know anything happening. So we had over time to develop a news gathering system, which was really one of the things which people don't realize. It was a massive achievement. Training young people into the skills of journalism and then seeing them go into mainstream also was a great success. But also the sense of pride of Muslims having their own newspaper. And whatever, we were small, relatively small compared to the mainstream media, but we were vociferous and very courageous in defending the interests of the community, of articulating some of the issues. And what, a newspaper is not only about recording the present, but it's also about preserving the past. Because now you can go and read and see these were the debates that was taking place at this particular time, and these were the arguments about it. And I'm one of those many people who miss Q News. It's unfortunate we see, this is one of the things. Every Muslim will talk about how bad the media, but the media does not fall from heaven. It has to be created on earth. They want the media without the investment. If there's no investment, they're not going to get the media. And I still think it was the best ever Muslim publication, independent, to be produced in the West, because it was proactive, it responded to real issues, it was not afraid to deal with issues, courageous, always pioneering, always pushing the boundaries of things. I tell you, one of the best stories which I like about Q News was, we decided one day we were bored, there was nothing. I like Elvis Presley. So then we decided that we do a press release that we interviewed Elvis Presley. Now he's living in Jeddah, and he's got 4 wives, and he was doing tawaf, and we stopped him and interviewed him. We did actually the interview, then we did a press release. A few hours later, a very big newspaper from Jeddah called us, and he said, Yahe, where is he? We want to interview him too, So, that is happy. I mean, bringing a smile to some reader somewhere. Thinking out of the ordinary. That's what newspaper is about. It's not about ideas. It's what poetry is about. That's what singing is about. When you hear the Buddha or something like that, it lifts the metaphorical to the highest level when he talks, and that is very important role that I think. And when we started Q News, one of the issues was, I had to travel a lot in the country. One of the problems was a lot of from the subcontinent, the imams, they were against showing of pictures. So they not allow the newspaper inside the thing. But we found a very easy way of dealing with that. We took a picture of the imam with his family or friends like this and wrote an article, Maulana Saab, he gets studied at Deoban. So when his picture was there, it was all right. He'll put it on the notice board and say people to buy it, you see. So over time, we managed to creep into all the mosque. Today, I don't think it's a problem.
So you said recently that we need storytellers, filmmakers, and novelists. Why is it important to tell our stories?
It's important for us is a therapeutic, for us ourselves. We each have got a story. We want to take our story about how lovely my wife is, about how lovely my husband is, or how my mother's cooking is the greatest. And you need a platform or something. Why things like Facebook and Twitter? People try to tell their stories now in a much more, shorter version. There's a debate, like we talk about somebody like Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad about the role of, for instance, is the novel got a role in Islam? Because we didn't invent the novel. There are not many novels written, But it's a new phenomenon which grew out of the Muslim context. There's nothing wrong with it. We are now actually trying to republish some of the good old novels written by Muslims, including one by Mamedik Pickthorpe called Saeed the Fisherman, and a few others. And we want to encourage people to read about this. But I say that Muslims as migrant communities living in the globalized world, particularly those of us in the West, we have a lot of story of struggle, of surviving, of prospering, of engaging, of going against the odds, of doing many things. And those are inspiring for the young people. Need to know where their parents have come, what they faced, how they dealt with it, how we're building. And if people can write those in a nice, interesting way, people like to read it, not only Muslims but others. They'll better understanding about the issues and the challenges. And more important, then there'll be this hybriding of different kind of ideas of things. Also, it's a preservation of legacy. Because now when you go to England, you see so many halal butchers and halal restaurants. People forget that in the 60s when people came, they used to slaughter in the bathroom, because there was no halal meat and people used to sell meat from the corner. If those people can tell those stories, we can make films about those kind of things. That's interesting. About also how the Muslim community grew, because most of the British Muslim community, it was the men who moved to the UK. Then after a while, what they did is they asked for Eid presents, so they sent wives, like cousin and stuff. So they married them. Then suddenly they say, we've got children, we need school. So they built schools. And though themselves, they were obsessed about building mosques. Though back home, they might not even be praying. But here suddenly they had children, they wanted to build schools, though themselves were not educated. So everything, original investment, was ad hoc, totally disorganized. But it had a lot of barakah. Now we're a very rich community, we don't have the barakah. We organize, but we can't do anything. So it's a strange turnaround of events. So now you've got professors, doctors, big business people and stuff. But there's no new mosque which has been built in the last 10 years. All our mosques have been built by those people who worked hard, who saved every month. They gave 1 shilling or 2 pences or things.
So in closing, what would a trailblazer say to other budding trailblazers?
The beauty about living in a modern, challenging time is everybody has got an opportunity to lead. But before you lead, it might be wise to learn how to follow. Because if you're a good follower, then you can make a good leader. If you're not a good follower, you don't know how to mobilize the people around you. I think what is needed more than anything is the ability to learn and to learn fast. And then to turn around that learning experience, the learning curve, into a tipping point so that you can move forward. Issue, people talk about trailblazing. I have some colleagues of mine always writing Fuad is trailblazing, pioneering. I personally don't think. It's just, I operate on a gut feeling that this is the need for the time and I want to do it. And what I do, I take risks, which is not recommended, but I take risks. But the risk is always a calculated risk. I never thought that it's going to be a risk that's going to take for this is very important, and this message should be very clear for Islam. The important thing is the purification of the intention, because we never get rewarded for your trailblazing, for your achieving. No, you get rewarded for your niyat, for your intention. So learn first of all, if you want to be a real trailblazer, all the basic art of cleansing your intention, of enhancing your ikhlas, your sincerity. Because so long as you are covered by the cloak of good intention and wearing the cape of sincerity, you are safe. Because even if you fail, you succeed. If you succeed, you pass. Other people go around, I think the other way around, that we set goals and then you achieve the goals, and then in the plot you lose the. People can see it if you're not sincere. People can see it if you do not have the purity of intention, because it divert you on the way. You become very vulnerable to shaitan, to all kinds of indices and things. And good leadership, which is good about it, is not afraid. We move through a period, for instance, where political Islamicists, Muslim Brotherhood, I was tinkering with them at one level. You have to go and do these tarbiyah classes, stage 1, stage 2. You're never told the real agenda, till you're ready for it. You cannot keep secret anything. Now, I believe you have something to say this way, you just say it right from the beginning. We have the ability. You see, the tarbiyah is not making the vision more clearer or strengthening you in any way. So I always say now, anybody Muslim has got an agenda for my community or for the society I live in, I want him, there's no secrecy, I want him to say now what is it he wants. And we debate for it now in a public, transparent, accountable way. You can't keep quiet and say, what is the secret? Nobody's going to arrest you for wanting whatever. Gone are those days now anyway. So now we'll see that with all this Arab Spring and all these kind of things, there's a bankruptcy of ideas on the economic, on the social, Because most the time the idea has been to put Bismillah at the beginning and Alhamdulillah at the end, and the in between becomes halal.